For all intents and purposes, the following recordings are fictional. If it wasn't, Gregory would be in a lot of trouble with the council. This is a real American wizard in a hypothetical wizarding world. Now let's turn our seeing stones and scry upon the orb.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful wizard, the wonderful wizard. Say, cut it up, whiz, cut it up. Say, cut it up, whiz.
The great magician Questlove couldn't capture my essence, not even Merlin could capture my presence, and your wife is the queen of putrescence. Hello and welcome back to Magic Orb, the only podcast for wizards by wizards, but for magic users by magic users. What a lovely day it is to be here today. I am grateful to have you all here listening to the great magician, Greg the Sorcerer. I am very happy to be talking to all of you. As you can see, I've got some new candles, right? I went into the recent fund that I came into with my new gravity spells, and I was able to purchase a couple new candles. I'm excited about that. I am having fun getting into weaving, quilting. Did you know if you make a friendship quilt with someone and imbue each and every one of the squares in the friendship quilt, you can also capture your best friend's soul inside it so they never leave you ever. So I'm looking for a friend who can join me doing that. So be getting into quilting. It's been tough, I have been growing my own flax seed so I could make thread from that, so that I could, every single step of the way that you create something, every single step you can imbue a little bit more magic into it and make it that much more powerful. You kind of want to have a vertical integration of all the things you create so that you can make sure it's as powerful as possible, so I can capture a really powerful friend's soul, right? I'd like to be friends with who's got a powerful soul. Dante Basco. I'd like to be friends with him. Maybe I could capture his soul. I don't know. Too late to capture Robin Williams, R.I.P. I would like to capture any soul I can get my hands on, really. But those are just my extracurriculars currently. Let's get to the questions. I've had a lot of ravens come at me this week. My mailbox is full of black feathers. So let's get into our first question. This question is from Yarp. My buddy wants to turn me into a werewolf. Should I let him? The question is what you were before. If you want to turn into a werewolf, that comes with a lot of really cool things. A couple bad things along with it, but you do get to turn into a very sexy, powerful werewolf once a month, right? You see the moon, you see a really good video of the moon, you could possibly turn into a werewolf. The problem is sometimes, depending on what you were before, if you were magically imbued and you had some power over magic, you might be able to keep your brain, you might be able to keep your mind. If you do not have a control of magic, you do turn into a mindless beast that will kill anything near it. So that's a little tough. But still, even if you are a mindless beast, what man has not been called a mindless beast once a month? So maybe that is your true form. Maybe you're meant to be a werewolf. Yarp. I've met a couple werewolves. Some are really not happy about it. Most are not super happy about being a werewolf, but Remus Lupin, cool guy. I met him before he passed away. Rest in peace. A lot of death in this episode. But Remus Lupin not super psyched to be, although they do discriminate hard. I know they do really discriminate against werewolves in the UK, so maybe that's a problem with them and not a problem with being a werewolf in general. they really go hard on anyone who's not just like straight wizard in the UK. Do you guys know that? They go hard on anyone, right? They still call, in the UK, they still call elves, they still call them house elves. That's crazy. Now they have a specific like subgroup of elves that, you know, they have like pushed into this area for so long that they crave obedience at this point. It's nuts. It's wild, right? Um, but yeah, they kind of discriminate against anyone who's not straight wizard, right? They don't like trolls, they don't like giants. Uh Crazy. But if you are in North America, I would say specifically Western North America, there's not as many legends about werewolves in the woods of that area. Eastern North America, there's a lot more, you know, dangerous things in the woods stories. But in the Western North America, I don't think there's quite as many, especially around, you know, metropolitan areas. So you could once a month just go out into those woods and you'll be fine. And not as many people hate werewolves as much. Not as many people discriminate against werewolves as much in the Western United States. So you also have to wonder what kind of werewolf it is, right? Is it a true werewolf? Is it an alpha werewolf type? Is it a bestial werewolf, right? That is also going to determine how much lucidity you have, right? Some werewolves stay werewolves for the whole time and then they can cast magic too. If that's the case, take them up, right? If your buddy is just always being a werewolf, shoot, yeah, man, right? If you're like those dudes from Gilneas in the Azeroth system, that's really cool, man. They're just always a wolf, and they can sometimes turn into a human if they want to be, right? As soon as they get angry, they turn back into a werewolf. But right, like I don't remember what they're called, Worgen or something. If that's the case, that's cool as hell. I really like that, right? Be a always werewolf. That's cool because that's the case with, you know, vampires. They can't turn off their vampirism, whereas a werewolf is just sometimes a vampire. Kind of a weird deal. You would think that vampires and werewolves would get along most of the month, except for one day of the month. You know, you ever play hide and go seek with a werewolf? Werewolf, you know, that's what they call it. I like werewolves. They're cool. They're hot. They're sexy. There are different kinds of. Man, I had one friend turn into a werebat. That sucks, right? Because then you have like the blood sucking ability of a vampire, but also it's only while you're a bat. That sucks, right? And it's like once a month I get to fly. I wish this was permanent. Werebears are cool. Oh man, I wish I was a werebear because they can cast magic. The only werebears I've ever seen are just permanently werebears. That's awesome, man. And they're just like huge, you know, big, cuddly. They usually have like a pack of dogs with them. Really cool. I want to be a werebear. They're also really huge fans of berries, right? You ever see? And that's the thing with like my magical, you know, fruit and fish. Those are werebears' favorite fruits. Maybe I'm spiritually a werebear. Interesting. That's what I would say. If you're in the Western United States and you have a little bit of control of magic, why not? Why not do that? That seems fun, seems cool, seems interesting, gives you some talking points. You can't associate with vampires anymore because they're sworn rivals, but, you know, as long as you don't live near forks, you're all right. Okay? So I say go for it, Yarp. See, plus you get a group of new cool friends. As long as your alpha isn't a dick, go for it. This next question is from Quingle. Shouts out Quingle. They ask, my potions keep solidifying into a sludge. Any tips? Quingle. That does sound like a gnomish name or perhaps even a fairy name. So you might be brewing potions that are too small batch. Some potions do need a bigger, I don't know, I'm just guessing. If you are a gnome or a fairy, you might need to, get a bigger cauldron, and then you'll be able to grow. Then you'll be able to brew something that's a lot bigger batch, which will make the turning into sludge not as difficult. Also, if you make sure every third spin of your mix, right? If you do 3 turns of your magical wooden spoon, if you turn it one more time clockwise, right? 1, 2, 3, turn clockwise. That should reverse it a little bit, right? It shouldn't turn into sludge as easily, but it does add 5 minutes to each one of those waiting steps in between. And like, here's the thing about potion sludge. You can still use it. It's not as powerful, but like, I don't know, get good at chugging if that's something that you consistently have problems with, right? All you like, it's just like, you just have to get really good at swallowing the sludge, right? If you can't brew potions good, adapt, right? Take down the health potion that's goop, right? Slurp it up. Act like it's Jello, okay? If you have Jello-like potions, get good at eating Jello. Plus, if it's sludgy enough, you can hold it like without a jar, and you just like blah, 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 you know, right? You suck it down, heals you up, you're good to go. You don't need to have a potion bottle. So that might even be an advantage to you. If you get really good at making sludge, you can start selling that as like, here's a thing that, here's a potion that you can just throw into someone's mouth, and then they eat it up, and, it doesn't take time for them to, open it up and drink it. So if you're in a party, that could be a good item. You could start selling that. Start marketing that to adventuring parties. Sludge is cool. I used to live off of sludge when I was bad at potions, right? There was a period of time where I was trying to make my own elixir of life, and I was just making sludge of life, which doesn't work, but doesn't taste half bad either, and it like fills you up for the day, kind of like a lembas bread, right? One handful of sludge of life will keep you running for the rest of the day. So that's how I would save time on eating. That's good question, Quingle. Size up your cauldron. This next question is from Horg the Orc. Are there any wizards you have beef with? Ooh, I got beef with a lot of wizards, because a lot of wizards aren't doing it the way they should be. A lot of wizards are trying to be something that they're not, right? Every single day that Elminster parades around as a wizard, when really he's a paladin for Mystra, is a sham. He's a sham. He's a magic user. Sure, he's a magic user. He's not a mage. He's not a wizard. He's a paladin for Mystra, right? Doing her bidding whenever she wants him to do stuff, right? I got into wizardry because I wanted to wield the power myself. That dude is a dog to Mystra, doing anything she wants. I wouldn't be surprised if they were doing uncouth things with each other, because he just does whatever she says. What a punk, Elminster. He can come to my wizard's tower, right, and step in my prison of magical negation. See if we want to fight then, right? Fist fight, me and him. He's like 40,000 years old, man. I'll beat him to death. There's also some wizards that, I'm just not a fan of, right? Most of wizards in the UK, right? There's some that aren't as bad as they're made out to be, right? Crab and Goyle, they weren't that bad. Rasputin, no beef. Cool guy. Rasputin's really cool guy. As a matter of fact, there are some wizards that were within the Russian court when everybody was trying to kill him. I got beef with those guys. They're not even powerful enough for me to remember their names. Any other wizards I have beef with? David Blaine. David Blaine, I don't love. Don't know if he actually does magic. I'm not sure. Every time I watch something from him, I get freaked out. That YouTube video, David Blaine Street Magic, that I swear is magical. So I don't like him. I don't know what his deal is. He's really secretive. He should be coming to the council meetings, but he doesn't. We all know I don't love Merlin. He's been dead for a really long time. Good riddance. But yeah, I mean, most of my enemies are dead, and they should stay that way unless I raise up their bodies. Now, if we're talking about what other magic users do I have beef with, the list goes on even longer. I've talked about my struggle with druids in the past. Paladins are fine, right? They are magical. It does come from a divine source. I kind of step back from any divine sources unless you claim to be a wizard, right? And then you're not a wizard, you're a divine caster. Sorcerers are cool, I'd say. A spell sword? A spell sword? Commit one way or the other, right? Because you're not a divine caster. You're using arcane magic, but you're doing it in such a heavy-handed way. Why would you make your sword longer and turn blue when you can just cast fireball, okay? Why would you ever, want to do, make yourself faster when you can just cast fireball? Spell swords I'm not a huge fan of. Arcane tricksters, why are you a rogue masquerading as a knowledgeable arcane user, okay? Stupid. Warlocks, I don't have a problem with, similar to divine casters. I do have a problem with most warlock patrons. Right? They're getting these people who are a little more dumb, and they're getting them to do all their dirty work in exchange for power that they're going to take away anyway. It's a really one-sided arrangement that, every single warlock thinks that they have the upper hand at, but none of them have lived long enough to know the contract law involved in becoming a warlock, right? They're making deals with devils, but they don't even know everything that they're agreeing to. I've lived long enough that I think, possibly, I could get into a bargain with a devil and be able to suss it out. But the problem is, getting into a bargain with the devil, he's always going to bend, he's never going to accept terms that are beneficial to you, right? That's my problem with warlocks, is they are a little bit more dumb. They did agree to a bad deal, but they didn't know that it was a bad deal because that devil's never going to be on the side of a bad deal, right? That's their whole thing. The house always comes out on top, and the devil always gets his due, right? So don't deal with the devil. That's what I'd say, right? Fae, fairies, as long as they don't think you're too funny to prank, I guess you could do a deal with them, and then you could be a warlock. But I think most warlocks are kind of dumb. That's one thing that is not very prevalent in the UK, right? In Britain, in England, is there's almost no warlocks nowadays. I do think that there are some in Ireland. Shouts out, but the majority of Irish wizards aren't allowed at Hogwarts, so you don't even see them very often. But they don't have almost any warlocks in the UK, or they're just not as talked about. Maybe they're shoved under the rug and put in prison or something, right? Did you know that the UK has an illegal prison that's outside of Wales? It's nuts, right? I think it might magically be transported to the Arctic Circle or something, but it's crazy. I do have beef with the Dragonborn of Skyrim. I know he's, long past. I think he might actually be an avatar of Akatosh, but the dude couldn't decide what he wanted to be, and every single, iteration of his life throughout that, multiplicity of timelines, he chose to be a stealth archer. Right? Almost every single time. It would be really cool because he would get into conjuration magic, but then, a couple quests later, he's back to doing stealth archery like he did the first time in the multiverse of the choices that he had in that instance. Right? Tamriel really is bad. It really sucks. I don't love Tamriel. It's just, I lived there for a couple years, but there's always some kind of multiversal timeline stuff going on, and then the dwarves left, which they were my favorite, right? I don't really get into mechanical magic myself, but they really got their soul gems on lock up there. So, I plane shifted back to Earth, but I would have liked to see more of what they were doing if they didn't just disappear. That's one great mystery I still have no idea about. This next question is from Argyle. Shouts out Argyle. What is a magical snack you love? Ooh, great question. Here's the thing. First, White Monster. You have to get it at most non-magical gas stations. Second, Mountain Dew. Also have to get it at most non-magical gas stations. Those are both magical. I don't care what anyone else says. Third, what you do is you get fish jerky, right? You can catch a couple salmon, dry out their flesh, and then you mince it up, and then you mix that with dried blackberries, right? And you mix those two things together. Say a couple incantations. Man, that is powerful stuff. That'll get you through the day. It tastes like death, right? Because the fish mixes with the berries in not a great way because you dried them both. It tastes truly terrible, but it really peps you up. That if you mix that with a White Monster, boom, you could take over the world. Other magical snacks, if you go to the headquarters of Lil Debbie's, you can get some magical Nutty Buddies. You can get some magical, I think Swiss rolls. They have a magical variant of. You do have to know the secret password, which I can't give out over an entire broadcast. But send me a dedicated raven that won't disappear once they hit my mailbox. Then I will respond with the secret password to the Little Debbie's magical section. I do just love snacks in general, right? I am still mortal. I can still eat. I am not yet a lich. So I do love snacks and I do miss them. But those are the main magical ones that I like. You can get different kinds of magic berries from different sources, right? Like if you have a druid friend, they can summon a bunch of good berries for you. You can, you can get some fruit from the Tree of Life. You can, if you know someone in Narnia, they can try and smuggle you one of those apples from one of those magical trees. It's a lot of magical snacks are magical fruit. Dried mangoes, they do raise your robustness. So if you want to get really good robustness, eat some dried mangoes. Yeah. Shouts out Argyle. That's a great question. This next question is from Wolf the Werewolf. He says, my friend doesn't want me to turn him into a werewolf. I think this might be connected with the other question. My friend's girlfriend sucks. Literally, she's a vampire, and I want him to not be dating her anymore. I figured the only way to get him away from her is to turn him into a werewolf. What should I do? Well, first, you should wait for him to listen to this, because I might have already convinced him, right? I might have already convinced him. However, if he does have a vampire girlfriend, I don't think you're going to get him away. Have you ever heard of a vampire thrall? brother, a vampire thrall, like, vampire thrall is just full simping. That's all it is, right? And so if your buddy has been turned into a vampire thrall by his girlfriend, he's never going to agree to it. So the question is, should you do it without his permission? On the record, no. On the record, no. But if you're not a fan of mind control, if you want to break the spell, right? If you don't think it's actually love, if you think he doesn't actually love her, if you're not just trying to hold on a friendship, even though you can tell you two have been growing apart and have different interests, and you can tell that it's breaking, your friendship's breaking, but you're too afraid to let things pass, then yeah, turn him into a werewolf, for sure. I mean, like, it's better to, be stuck in an ancient curse for forever than, let time pass and old relationships die. That's why I have tons of friends that I could trap into my magic quilt. Not all vampires are bad, right? Look at Wesley Snipes. Cool, right? If Wesley Snipes was my girlfriend, I would not let you turn me into a werewolf. That's what I would tell you. Also, like, he kind of made choices, right? When he chose to date a vampire girlfriend, he knows that you and her would not get along. He knows that, and yet he chose her. So maybe he's a sucky friend, okay? Maybe you should leave him. Next question. Help me, I drank too much spore sap and am seeing colors and growing shrooms out of my pits. Please help. From Olog. Okay. First time with the spore sap? Really, dude? Oh, man. One time, I was out in the middle of, I think the state is Arizona. I don't know. It was big desert land in North America. And I chugged about 2 gallons of spore sap. I got really good at taking it down, just chugging. Glug, 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 2 gallons of it. And I swear I did not stop seeing colors and static in my vision for at least 100 years. 100 years. Now, you are complaining about mushrooms coming out of your armpits. You drank too much spore sap, mushrooms are coming out of your armpits. That's not a bad thing. That's called a side hustle, brother. That's a renewable source of income. I don't see why you're complaining. That's also like, you only have like a 2% chance of having mushrooms grow out of your armpits when you drink that much spore sap. So really count it as a blessing, especially if you get different kinds, right? You could just get button mushrooms coming out of your pits. You could get, psilocybin. You sell that to some college kids, you're raking in the cash, right? If it's a magical mushroom growing out of your pits, even if it's a mushroom that grows poison, right? If you've got poisonous mushrooms, you can sell that to the market to use as poisons, right? As long as you don't have a lady friend who likes nibbling on your armpit hair, which you shouldn't have that anyway. That's disgusting, right? Maybe she should nibble on it so she dies. But as long as you don't have that girlfriend, then you're fine, man. Just pick it every morning. Make sure, you have a good morning routine. You wake up, you shower, you cut off your mushrooms, you sell that at the market, and boom, you don't even have to work the rest of the day. Man. Oh, my lobster's too juicy. My butter's too buttery. I have Kerrygold coming out of my armpits. Shut up, Olog. Now, if you can't do anything because you're seeing the colors, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You might want to cast See Black and White, right? You might want to cast Dog Vision on yourself, and then, you should be able to go throughout the world, right? If you're seeing colors and you cast Dog Vision, boom, it equals out. Now you have regular vision. So... that's my answer to you, Olog. Next question. Are there any spells to make me taller? From Walden. Shouts out, Walden. Any spells to make me taller? It's tough. Okay, so there's a couple things you can do in this scenario. And then you also need a scroll or a tome or a person who can cast permanence on the enlarge spell, right? And you need to make sure that they can do it on all of you and not just, it sporadically, is permanent in just like your arms, and now you have long gorilla arms, right? You could take this opportunity, right? If you do find a wizard who can, right? They could do like a bulk deal, right? They could enlarge a couple different things. They could enlarge, if you want to get more targeted, it's going to be more expensive, but you could just, okay, could you enlarge my biceps a little bit, right? Could you enlarge my butt? Every wizard wants a huge butt. We all know that, right? Could you enlarge my butt and cast permanence on that, right? They might be able to give you a deal on a 2-for-1, enlarge my whole body and enlarge my butt, right? They call that the wizard butt lift, the WBL, right? So, anything's possible with magic. It just matters on how much money you have. If you want to study those yourself, right? I think it would be better if you study first the reverse of enlarge, the reduce. Master that, and then you can start on enlarge, and it'll, because when you reduce it, it takes less energy. When you enlarge something, you have to put so much more mana into that spell. So if you get really good at reduction, then you can get really good at enlargement. And permanence, really expensive spell, really tough. I don't know how to help you there. I do know there are some, this is a bit of a forbidden knowledge. I do know there are some necromantic spells that can break bones in specific spots, right? So just a theory, this is just a theory. If you get a good necromancer and they can break your femur in, 14 different spots, and maybe, I don't know, this is a little more dangerous, but you could do it. Break your shin bones in a couple different spots, and then you also have a really good restoration wizard, and you heal that pretty quickly. Then you don't have to go through the pain. But your legs are also just longer. Your proportions are going to be a little bit weird, but I do think it would be cheaper. It's going to be a little more dangerous, but maybe you could pioneer that yourself. Maybe you could follow in old Greg's footsteps and get into necromancy. Okay? So there's a lot of ways to make yourself taller. You could have really big shoes. I know that's not magical, but, sometimes you just got to put in the work. Okay? Next question is from Jarl the Yonly. Okay? I keep getting catfished by fairies. Every time I am exchanging ravens with a new lady, it turns out to be a fairy pranking me and calling me a lonely, lonely boy. Yes. Jarl the Lonely, more like. How do I not get catfished by fairies anymore? First, you got to figure out why fairies love pranking you. Is it because you have a big reaction, right? Is it because every time you get catfished, you believe it? If that's the case, they're gonna keep catfishing you, dude. Maybe, perhaps, if you keep getting catfished, you no longer try and date people over Raven. You no longer try and date people from a distance. Maybe you should get out into public. Get out of the wizard's tower and go to a tavern, right? Meet a young barmaid if you're young. Meet an old barmaid if you're old. And chat them up. See if the vibe is right. And if they're working and they're only being nice to you, that's probably just because they want tips, okay? But, find a nice half-orc who's also lonely, and do what Jarl and half-orc does, not get catfished, right? Now, maybe these fairies are doing it because they are into you. Maybe you think you're getting catfished, but really they're embarrassed that they're into you, Jarl. Maybe these are fairies that like you, but they're too afraid to say it, okay? Maybe your type, maybe people who are into you are fairies, right? And your life is going to be full of pranks and things pulled on you, buckets of water falling on your head, right? Your life is going to be pretty miserable, but at least you'll find love. So, That's what I would say to you, Jarl. Either get out of the house, go to a tavern, hit on a half-orc, or keep messaging these fairies and see if they're into you the way that you wish they were. Okay? Shouts out Jarl. This next question is from Brickle the Baker. Shouts out Brickle. What foods are most suitable for enchantments? Well, okay, so like I was saying about the quilts earlier, every step where you can modify the process of creation of something is another step wherein you can add more magic to that. I'm going to get a little bit into the weeds, pardon the pun, but if you imagine a weed growing or a tree growing, right? Every single time it's taking in water, if it's taking it in from a magical source, the time that it takes for that seedling to grow is more and more and more magical. So if we think about what are the places where something magical can enter the food system, it's either A, from the ingredients, right? So if you pick a dish that has a lot of ingredients, you can potentially add more and more magic, or in a recipe that takes a lot of time, right? So let's think about it. So like baking, right? That's a lot of time and a lot of ingredients. You think about sourdough bread, it's only, 3 or 4 ingredients. You can add more, but 3 or 4 ingredients for a great sourdough. The proofing and the time that it's resting in between, you knead it and then you put it in a bowl and then you put that in a magical cupboard. You let that rise for an hour or two and then you take it out, you knead it. Every time you knead it, you add a little bit more mana into it. You let it rise in a magical cupboard for a little bit. That's going to be a very, very powerful magical loaf. So anything baking, I would say. Any kind of baking of goods, you can add more and more magic to it. Otherwise, think about the time, right? The things that are the most time sensitive, right? The things that you can cook for the longest without it being disgusting. Barbecue and slow cookers, right? And I think that this is an area that isn't as explored as it should be. Because, if you have a brisket that's cooking in a barbecue for 24 hours, for 14 hours, you can almost be doing a ritual over that time. You can do a ritual of restore stamina on this brisket, and then every slice of brisket means that you could run for 14 hours. One time I ate 3 pounds of brisket in one sitting, and then I was able to jump to the moon, right? I was also on a lot of spore sap at the time, but it's powerful. Brisket is powerful. That's also why I invested in a crock pot. So much magic can go into a crock pot, right? It's cooking for so long, right? Really long time cooking, right? In the morning, you put in a couple magical ingredients and you're letting it stew for 12 hours and you think your dinner isn't going to be super magic? Get out of here, right? That's one of the easiest ways to, boost your mana at the end of the day, because you've had, the magic fester inside this crock pot for a long time. Could you add a lot of cream cheese to it to make it tasty? Yeah, you could, right? So what I would say is any kind of baked good, brisket, or crock pot recipes. Those are the 3 best ways you can have, magical foods. Those are the 3 best things that you can turn magic. That's been it from me. I am Greg the Sorcerer. Thank you for turning in your scrying stones to the magic orb. Make sure you turn into a werewolf. Make sure you divorce your vampire girlfriend. Cast Fireball. Have a good night.
Shadow Wizard Money Gang. We love casting spells. This song is sponsored by the Shadow Government. legalize nuclear bombs.
Swag Messiah. Bees made